The stars burned cold in the void as the Velner warship cut through space. Inside the massive vessel, Admiral Krelvin studied the holographic display before him. A small blue planet rotated slowly in the projection, insignificant and alone in its corner of the galaxy. "This is the target?" Krelvin asked, his voice carrying the boredom of 1,000 conquered worlds. "Yes, Admiral," his tactical officer replied. "The species calls their world Earth. They have barely left their own moon. Primitive nuclear weapons. Chemical rockets. No quantum shields. No plasma weaponry." Krelvin touched the display, and it zoomed closer to Earth. He could see the lights of their cities, tiny specks against the dark continents. "And the High Command wants us to bring 500 ships for this?" Supreme Overlord Dexrol believes overwhelming force will prevent resistance. "A quick surrender means fewer casualties on both sides." The Admiral laughed without humor. "These creatures cannot resist, even if they wanted to. We could take this planet with 10 ships." He straightened his uniform and turned away from the display. "Prepare the fleet. We jump to their system in 6 hours. Send the standard surrender demand when we arrive. Far below on Earth." Captain Jinho Park stood on the observation deck of the orbital defense platform, just 7. He was a tall man with sharp eyes that had seen combat during the Mars colony uprising 5 years ago. That conflict had been humans fighting humans over independence and resources. Now he commanded one of Earth's few military stations in space, though he often wondered what they were defending against. Humanity had searched the stars for decades and found nothing but silence. "Captain, you should see this," Lieutenant Heron called from her station. She was young but brilliant, the best weapons officer Ginho had ever worked with. Ginho walked to her console and looked at the screen. "What am I looking at?" "Unusual readings from the edge of the system. Dr. Choi detected them first from the observatory and forwarded them to us. Quantum signatures that don't match anything natural. They appeared suddenly about an hour ago near the Kuiper Belt." Jinho frowned. "Equipment malfunction?" Dr. Choi checked everything twice. "She says the readings are real." Before Jinho could respond, his communicator buzzed. It was General Sung-Ho Kim, the head of Earth's Combined Defense Forces. The general's face appeared on the small screen, his expression serious. "Captain Park, report to the command briefing in 30 minutes. We have a situation." The briefing room was crowded when Jinho arrived. Generals and admirals from every nation filled the seats. President Mi-Soon Han of the Pan-ASEAN Coalition appeared on the main screen, along with other world leaders. Ginho found a seat near the back. Dr. Yujin Choi stood at the front, a small woman with tired eyes. She had been working for 20 hours straight. "The quantum signatures are definitely artificial," she said, pulling up images on the screen. "They match theoretical models of faster-than-light travel. Something very large entered our solar system 6 hours ago." The room erupted in noise. Questions flew from every direction. Dr. Choi raised her hand for silence. He sent probes. Long-range cameras captured this. She pressed a button, and the screen changed. Jinho felt his blood turn cold. The image showed hundreds of ships. They were massive, dark, and covered in strange geometric patterns. They hung in space like a swarm of metal insects, blocking out the stars behind them. "How many?" General Song-Ho asked quietly. "We count 500 vessels so far. The smallest is 3 times larger than our biggest ship." President Mi-Soon Han leaned forward on her screen. "Have they made contact?" "Yes, Madam President. 10 minutes ago, they sent this." A new voice filled the room. It was translated by a computer, but still sounded alien and cold. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet, you are now subjects of the Velner Empire. You have 24 hours to surrender all military forces and submit to our authority. If you resist, your species will be eliminated. You cannot win. You cannot flee. Comply or die."
Ow.
The room fell silent. Ginho looked around at the faces of Earth's military leaders. He saw fear, anger, and shock. But he also saw determination. Premier Buchung's Song of the Americas alliance spoke first. "Can we fight them?" General Song-Ho stood up. "I don't know. We have never faced anything like this." Our weapons are designed to fight other humans, not alien warships with technology we don't understand. But we have to try, said Chancellor Jae-Won Ryu of the European Federation. We cannot simply surrender our world to invaders. President Mi-sun looked at each leader on the screen. Then we are agreed. Earth will fight. One by one, the leaders nodded. Jin-ho returned to Aegis 7 with new orders. The platform was to be armed with every weapon available. Lieutenant Heirin was already working when he arrived, running diagnostics on the railgun batteries. Did you hear the message? Jin-ho asked her. Yes, sir. The whole crew heard it. She looked up from her console. Are we really going to fight them? We don't have a choice. Ensign Taman Lee, their young navigator, turned in his seat. Captain, how do we fight 500 ships when we only have maybe 50 that can actually reach orbit? Jin-ho walked to the window and looked down at Earth. He could see the blue oceans and white clouds. The planet he had sworn to protect. We make every shot count. We use every advantage we have. And we make them pay for every meter of space they take. Commander Hyansube contacted them from the lunar base Armstrong 3. His voice crackled over the comm. Jin-ho, I'm activating all defense batteries. We have weapons on the moon that can reach pretty far. If they come close, we'll give them hell. Good, Jin-ho replied. Coordinate with Major Subin and the Mars Squadron. We need everyone ready. The hours ticked away. Earth's small fleet moved into position. Every orbital platform powered up weapons that had never been fired in anger. On the moon, massive railgun batteries emerged from hidden bunkers. The Mars garrison launched every ship they had. Dr. Yuzhin worked without sleep, analyzing every piece of data about the alien ships. She discovered something interesting about their energy signatures and sent that information to all military commanders. As the deadline approached, Jin-ho gathered his crew. Listen to me. Those ships out there think we are weak. They think we will surrender without a fight. They think Earth is just another easy conquest. He paused and looked at each face. Let's show them what humans do when someone threatens our home. The 24 hours expired. The Velner fleet began to move toward Earth. The war had begun. Admiral. Krelvin sat in his command throne and watched the primitive planet grow larger on his screen. The deadline had passed and the humans had not responded to the surrender demand. It did not matter. They would learn. Admiral, shall we deploy the full fleet? His tactical officer asked. Krelvin waved his hand dismissively. No, send 50 ships. These primitives have nothing that can harm us. I will not waste the Empire's time with a full deployment against such weak prey. The officer hesitated. Sir, protocol suggests I have conquered 47 worlds, Krelvin interrupted. I know what I am doing. Send 50 ships and prepare landing forces. We will be dining on their capital by evening. 50 Velner warships broke from the main fleet and accelerated toward the inner solar system. Their dark hulls gleamed with power, shields already active, weapons charged. Inside each ship, warriors prepared for an easy victory. On the lunar surface, Commander Hyansube watched the alien ships approach through his scope. The lunar base Armstrong 3 was built into a crater wall, hidden from casual observation. He had 30 railgun batteries under his command, each one capable of throwing a tungsten round at incredible speeds. Contact in 20 minutes, his weapons officer reported. Hyansu activated the come to all stations. Listen carefully. We fire on my mark only. Coordinate your targets so we don't waste shots. These are the first aliens humanity has ever fought. Let's make sure they remember us. In orbit around Earth, Captain Jin-ho checked every system on Aegis-7 for the third time. Lieutenant Heirin had the weapons ready. Ensign Taman had calculated firing solutions for multiple scenarios. The crew was tense but focused. Captain, the alien ships are entering lunar orbit, Taman reported. They're not using any evasive patterns. They're flying straight at us. Jin-ho felt a cold anger settle in his chest. The aliens were so confident they did not even try to dodge. They thought humans were insects to be crushed without effort. Heirin, prepare railgun batteries 1 through 6. Taman, give me solutions for the lead ships. Yes, sir. The 50 Velner ships swept past the moon, ignoring the dark craters below. They did not scan for weapons. They did not take defensive positions. They simply flew toward Earth with the arrogance of conquerors who had never known defeat. It was a fatal mistake. All batteries locked on target, Heron reported. Her hands were steady on the controls. Jinho took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would change everything. Fire! Aegis 7 shook as 6 railguns fired simultaneously. Tungsten rounds, weighing 500 kilograms each, launched from electromagnetic rails at 40,000 kilometers per second. The projectiles were not missiles that could be shot down. They were not energy beams that could be deflected. They were solid metal moving at a fraction of the speed of light at the same moment. Commander Hyansu gave his order on the moon. 30 railgun batteries fired together. Launching a wall of metal toward the alien fleet, the Velner had shields designed to stop plasma weapons and energy beams. The shields worked by creating quantum fields that dispersed energy across multiple dimensions. They were perfect defense against advanced weapons. They were useless against simple mass. Traveling at extreme velocity, the first tungsten round hit a Velner cruiser in the center of its hull. The kinetic energy was so enormous that the ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist as a solid object. The metal vaporized instantly, creating an expanding cloud of superheated gas, where a warship had been seconds before. 3 more ships died in the same heartbeat. Then 5 more. Then 8. On his command throne, Admiral Krelvan stared in disbelief at his tactical display. 15 ships showed as destroyed. 15 ships gone in 3 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire. What are they using? Simple kinetic weapons, Admiral. Electromagnetic acceleration. But the velocity is it's impossible for such a primitive species. More rounds hit the Velner formation. The alien ships tried to scatter, but they were designed for the battles of advanced civilizations. They had never faced enemies who simply threw very heavy objects very fast. Major Subinyun watched from her frigate in the Mars Squadron. She had been waiting in the asteroid belt with 20 small ships. Now she gave the order to attack. All ships, full burn. Hit them from behind while they're confused. The human frigates were tiny compared to the Velnar warships. But they were fast, and their crews were angry. They dove into the battle, their own railguns firing, their missile batteries launching everything they had. One Velner ship tried to target a Gisavin with its plasma lance. The weapon fired, a brilliant beam of superheated matter that could melt through a mountain. But Lieutenant Heron had already moved the station using its maneuvering thrusters. The plasma beam missed by 200 meters and dissipated into space. Target that ship, Jinho ordered. Heron fired 3 railguns at once. All 3 rounds hit the Velner ship within milliseconds of each other. The warship broke apart like a child's toy. Ensign Taman was working faster than he had ever worked in his life. He calculated trajectories, predicted enemy movements, and fed targeting data to Heron. His fingers flew across his console. Captain, the enemy is trying to form a defensive sphere. If we let them organize, they'll be harder to hit, and we don't let them organize. Heron, rapid fire. All batteries. Keep them running. The G7's railguns fired again and again. The station was not designed for sustained fire, and warning alarms started going off. But Heron ignored them and kept shooting. Commander Hyansu coordinated the lunar batteries with brutal efficiency. He created overlapping fields of fire so that any ship trying to escape ran into another stream of projectiles. His crews worked like machines, loading and firing, loading and firing. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, 27 Velner ships were destroyed. The remaining 23 fled back toward their main fleet. Many of them damaged in trailing atmosphere, Captain Jinho looked at the debris field that had been alien warships. His hands were shaking slightly, but his voice was steady when he spoke to his crew. Good work, everyone. Get damage reports and prepare for the next attack, because they will come again. In the main Velner fleet, Admiral Krelvan watched the survivors limp back. His face was pale. 27 ships. He had lost 27 ships to a species that should not have been able to scratch his paint. "Get me Supreme Overlord Dextral," he said quietly. "Tell him I need reinforcements. Tell him these humans are not primitive. Tell him we underestimated them." The communications officer worked his console. After a moment, he looked up. "Sir, the High Command refuses to believe our report. They say it's impossible for a pre-quantum species to destroy Velnor warships. They say we must have made an error." Krelvin slammed his fist on his throne. "Error? I have 27 dead crews and you talk about errors." He stood up and walked to the tactical display. "Fine. If the High Command will not send help, I will finish this myself. Deploy the entire fleet. All 500 ships. We attack Earth with everything we have." His officers scrambled to obey. The massive Velnor Armada began to move, all of its ships activating weapons and shields. They would crush these humans and prove that the Velnor Empire was still supreme. But on Earth, humanity was preparing. General Sengho organized every defense. Dr. Yuzhin analyzed the wreckage of destroyed alien ships. President Misun coordinated with world leaders to bring every resource to bear, and on Aegis 7, Captain Ginho stood at his window and watched the alien fleet approach. His station was damaged. His railguns were overheated, but his eyes were hard and determined. "They're coming with everything this time," Lieutenant Heron said softly beside him. "I know," Jinho replied. "So we show them that everything they have is not enough. We show them that Earth does not surrender. We show them that humanity fights." The Velnor Armada came like a metal storm. 500 warships moved in perfect formation, their shields creating a shimmering barrier of energy that stretched across thousands of kilometers. This time, they were not careless. This time, they came prepared for war. Admiral Krelvin studied the tactical display with cold focus. "Deploy singularity bombs at the outer defense perimeter. I want those orbital platforms destroyed before we enter their range. Quantum disruptors on continuous fire. Molecular shredders ready for any ship that comes close." The first wave of Velnor weapons hit Earth's defenses like a hammer. 3 orbital platforms exploded in silent flowers of fire. 2 human frigates simply ceased to exist when molecular shredders tore apart their atomic bonds. The singularity bombs created tiny black holes that pulled in anything nearby before evaporating in bursts of radiation. On Jess 7, alarm screamed. The station shook as a near-miss sent shrapnel tearing through the outer hull. Captain Jinho grabbed his chair to stay upright. "Hull breach in sections 4 and 7, Ensign Timon reported, his voice tight with stress. "We're venting atmosphere." "Seal those sections," Jinho ordered. "Heron, status on weapons?" Lieutenant Heron worked her console even as sparks flew from a damaged panel beside her. "Railguns 3 and 5 are offline. The others are operational, but we're at 70% power. That last hit damaged our reactor feed." Jinho activated the come to all defense forces. "This is Captain Park. All units fall back to defensive position beta. Create overlapping fields of fire. Make them fight for every meter." Commander Hyonsu's voice came through from the moon. "Ginho, we're getting hammered up here. They're targeting our battery positions with some kind of beam weapon. I've lost 6 guns already." "Keep fighting," Jinho said. "Help is coming." Help was Vice Admiral Unisio Nam in the Jupiter fleet. She had been stationed at the outer system with 20 heavy cruisers and 30 frigates. Now her ships burned at maximum acceleration toward Earth, their crews ready for battle. "All ships load kinetic ordnance," Unisio commanded. She was a veteran of the asteroid wars and knew how to fight in space. "We hit them from the side while they're focused on Earth. Target their larger ships first." But the Velnor were ready this time. Their sensor arrays detected the Jupiter fleet while it was still millions of kilometers away. 100 Velnor ships broke off from the main attack and moved to intercept. The 2 forces collided in the orbit of Mars. Plasma lances met railgun fire. Quantum disruptors battled against electromagnetic pulses. Ships on both sides died in the fury of battle. On Earth, Dr. Yuzhin Choi had not slept in 3 days. She worked in her laboratory with engineer Dongwoo Kim, a brilliant man who could build anything if given enough time. They studied pieces of destroyed Velnor ships that had been recovered after the first battle. "Look at this," Yujin said, pointing to her screen. "Their quantum shields work by dispersing energy across multiple dimensions. It's incredibly advanced technology." Dongwook examined the alien components under a microscope. "But energy dispersion means the shields are calibrated specifically for energy weapons. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. They expect those kinds of attacks." Yujin's eyes widened. "Which means kinetic weapons bypass most of the protection. The shields don't know how to handle simple mass. That's why our railguns worked so well." "I need to tell the fleet," Dongwook said, already reaching for the cum. The information reached General Sang-ho within minutes. He immediately contacted all military commanders. "All units, prioritize kinetic weapons. Missiles, railguns, anything that throws mass. Energy weapons are secondary." The battle intensified. Commander Ji-won-sa had been hiding in the asteroid belt with 5 submarine carriers. These ships were disguised to look like dead rocks, their power systems shut down, their crews waiting in the cold and dark. The Velner had scanned the belt and found nothing worth worrying about. Now, Gi-won activated his ships. All carriers, launch fighters. Attack pattern Delta, hit their rear formations. 100 small fighters erupted from the hidden carriers. They were piloted by the best crews Earth had, and they swarmed toward the Velner fleet like angry wasps. Colonel Taesungo led the fighter squadron personally. Beside him flew Lieutenant Young Mian, his wingman, and a pilot with reflexes that seemed almost superhuman. Their fighters were experimental mechs, small and agile craft that could turn tighter than any ship. "Target their shield generators," Taesun said over the com. Heron's data shows they're located at the rear of each ship. "Hit them fast and get out." The fighters dove into the Velner formation. The alien ships tried to target them, but the mechs were too small and too fast. Young-mi flew her craft through a gap in the enemy shields and fired her. Railgun at point-blank range into a generator cluster. The Velner cruiser's shields collapsed and 3 other human ships immediately hit it with missiles. But the cost was terrible. For every Velner ship destroyed, humanity lost 5 or 6 vessels. The orbital platforms were being systematically eliminated. The lunar bases were taking catastrophic damage. Commander Hyeon-soo reported that he was down to 8 working guns and half his crew was dead. On Aegis 7, another hit shook the station violently. This time, the damage was critical. Fire broke out in the engineering section. The reactor was becoming unstable. "Captain, we need to evacuate," Ensign Taemin said urgently. The reactor could breach at any moment. Jinho looked at his crew. Lieutenant Heron was bleeding from a cut on her forehead but still working her weapons console. Taemin was pale but steady. The rest of the crew looked to him for orders. "Heron, how many shots do we have left?" Ginho asked. She checked her systems. "If I reroute all power to the railguns, including life support, I can give you maybe 10 shots before the reactor goes critical." Jinho made his decision. "All non-essential personnel evacuate to the escape pods now." "Heron, Taemin, you too." "No, sir," Heron said firmly. "You need a weapons officer." "And you need a navigator," Taemin added. "Those shots won't hit anything without firing solutions." Jinho looked at them both and felt a surge of pride. "Then let's make those 10 shots count." The crew that remained worked with desperate speed. They rerouted every bit of power to the railguns. They shut down life support, gravity, communications. Everything went to weapons. Taemin calculated the perfect targets while Heron prepared to fire. "Captain, I have solutions for the 3 largest enemy ships," Taemin reported. "They're command vessels based on their position in the formation. If we take them out, we might disrupt their coordination." "Do it," Ginho ordered. Aegis 7 fired its final shots. 10 tungsten rounds launched toward the Velner fleet. The station's reactor began to melt down immediately, but Jinho did not care. He watched the projectiles streak toward their targets. 7 of the 10 rounds hit. 2 Velner command ships exploded. The third was crippled and began to drift. The enemy formation wavered as commanders tried to reorganize without their leaders. "Evacuation pod now." Jinho shouted to his crew. They ran for the escape pod as the station shook itself apart around them. They launched just as a Jessabin's reactor breached. The explosion was bright enough to be seen from Earth's surface. Vice Admiral Uniceo saw a GS-7 die. She saw dozens of human ships die. She saw the orbital platforms fall one by one. But she also saw the Velner paying a terrible price. Their formation was broken. Their ships were burning. They had expected an easy conquest and instead found a war. All ships maintain fire, Uniceo ordered. We hold this line. For Earth. For humanity. The battle raged for 18 hours. When it finally ended, the space around Earth was filled with debris from both sides. Humanity had lost 60% of its fleet. Every orbital platform was destroyed or critically damaged. The lunar bases were ruins. Thousands of soldiers and sailors were dead, but the Velner Armada was shattered. Of 500 ships, only 330 remained. They had never suffered losses like this. No species had ever hurt them so badly. Admiral Krelvin stared at his casualties in disbelief. "This is impossible," he whispered. "They are primitives." "How?" His tactical officer looked up from his console. "Sir, we're receiving a message from the High Command." "They want a status report." Krelvin thought about lying. He thought about making excuses. Then he thought about the 170 ships that would never return. "Home. Tell them the truth," he said. The rescue ships found Captain Jinho and his crew, floating in their escape pod 12 hours after Egisavin's destruction. They were alive but exhausted. Lieutenant Hyrin had a concussion. Ensign Taman had a broken arm. Jinho himself had burns across his back from the reactor breach. But they were alive. General Sangho met them when they reached the emergency command center that had been set up in the Rocky Mountains. The general looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. Captain Park Sangho said, gripping Jinho's hand, "You bought us time. Those command ships you destroyed caused chaos in their formation. It gave our other forces a chance." Jinho looked at the tactical display on the wall. It showed the current positions of all forces. The Velner fleet had pulled back to regroup, but they were still out there. Still dangerous. Still intent on conquering Earth? What are our chances? Jinho asked quietly. Sangho sighed. Dr. Choi thinks she has found a way to win. Come, she wants to brief everyone. The command center was crowded with every surviving military leader. Vice Admiral Unesio was there, her uniform torn and dirty. Commander Heonsu had his arm in a sling. Major Subin looked exhausted. Commander G1 had lost 3 of his 5 carriers. Colonel Taesoon and Lieutenant Youngmi survived, but half their fighter squadron had not. Dr. Yujin stood at the front with Engineer Dongwook. She looked terrible, but her eyes were bright with discovery. We analyzed all the data from the battles, Yujin began. The Velner shields are incredibly advanced, but they have a fatal weakness. They're designed to counter energy weapons by dispersing the energy across quantum dimensions. But this calibration makes them vulnerable to kinetic strikes. She pulled up diagrams showing Velner's shield mechanics. A normal energy shield might stop a bullet, but let energy through. Their shields do the opposite. They're almost transparent to mass, but brilliant against energy. Our railguns work because we're throwing solid matter at high speeds. Dongwook stepped forward. I've been working on a plan. Every ship we have left, every station, every weapon platform, we load them all with kinetic ordnance. Tungsten rods, titanium slugs, steel balls, even construction materials if we have to. Anything with mass. President Misun Han appeared on the video screen. Will this actually work? Can we defeat an armada that size? Yujin nodded. If we coordinate perfectly, yes. We hit them all at once from multiple directions. Their shields can't stop mass-based attacks effectively. We overwhelm them with sheer volume of fire. General Sangho looked at his commanders. Can we do this? Do we have enough ships left? Vice Admiral Uniceo spoke up. My Jupiter fleet can attack from their left flank. We have 23 ships still combat capable. Commander Jiwan raised his hand. My carriers can launch from the asteroid belt again. They haven't found all our hiding spots, Major Subin added. The Mars squadron is down to 8 ships, but we can fight, Commander Hyansu said. The lunar bases are badly damaged, but I can give you 4 mass drivers. They're fixed position, but they can throw a lot of metal. Ginho felt strength returning to his body despite his injuries. What do you need me to do? Sang-Ho smiled grimly. You're going to command the final strike. Every captain trusts you. They saw what you did with Ijisavin. You're the one who can coordinate this. The plan came together over the next 6 hours. Every remaining human ship would be loaded with kinetic weapons. The timing had to be perfect. Everyone had to fire at the exact same moment, or the Velner would simply target the attackers one by one. Dr. Yujin and engineer Dong Wook worked miracles. They converted everything into ammunition. Construction beams became tungsten rods. Mining equipment became titanium projectiles. Even satellites were stripped down and turned into weapons. Lieutenant So-Young Park. A tactical AI coordinator programmed random evasive patterns into every ship's computer. The patterns would activate the moment they started their attack run. The Velner would not be able to predict where the human ships would move. Ginho gathered all the surviving crews for a final briefing. He stood before them, this group of exhausted, injured, determined humans who had already given everything. The Velner came here thinking we were weak, Ginho said. They, Odd Earth, would surrender without a fight. They were wrong. We have shown them that humanity does not bow. We have shown them that we fight for our home, our families, our future. Paused and looked at each face. This is our last attack. We have one chance to end this. Every ship fires together. Every weapon releases at the same moment. We hit them with everything we have, and we don't stop until they're destroyed or we are. Vice Admiral Unisio stood up. For Earth. The cry was taken up by everyone in the room. For Earth. For Earth. The attack began at dawn. Every human ship moved into position simultaneously. The Velner detected the movement, but they thought it was another desperate defense. Admiral Krelvin was confident. His fleet still outnumbered the humans. His ships were still superior in technology. Let them come, Krelvin said. We will crush them and finally take this miserable planet. The human forces came from every direction at once. Vice Admiral Unesio's Jupiter fleet burned hard from the left. Commander G1's carriers emerged from hiding and launched fighters. Major Subin's Mars squadron dove from above. Commander Hyansu's lunar mass drivers locked onto targets and in the center. Captain Jinho commanded from a small frigate, coordinating everything. All ships. Final check, Jinho said over the comm. Weapons loaded? A chorus of confirmations came back. Targets locked? More confirmations? Evasive patterns ready? Yes, sir. Ginho took a deep breath. This was it. Everything humanity had left. Every weapon, every ship, every ounce of courage. All of it focused on this one moment. Fire. Thousands of kinetic projectiles filled space. Tungsten rods moving at 100,000 kilometers per second. Titanium slugs launched from railguns. Steel balls fired from mass drivers. Construction beams turned into spears of metal. Everything humanity could throw was suddenly moving toward the Velner fleet. The alien shields tried to stop the attack. The quantum fields activated, dispersing energy across dimensions. But there was no energy to disperse. It's just mass. Just simple, deadly, unstoppable mass. The first wave of projectiles hit the Velner formation like a tsunami of metal. Shields collapsed. Hulls shattered. Ships that had survived battles across a dozen galaxies died in seconds. Admiral. Krelvin watched in horror as his tactical display turned red. Ships were disappearing from his formation so fast the computer could not keep up. He tried to order evasive maneuvers, but the humans had predicted that. Their ships were moving in random patterns programmed by Lieutenant So-Young. Velner plasma lances fired at empty space. All ships returned fire. Target anything that moves. Krelvin screamed, but it was too late. The human attack was too coordinated, too overwhelming. Too perfectly timed, a group of 16 tungsten rods, each weighing 10 tons and moving at relativistic speeds, hit Krelvin's flagship simultaneously. The ship did not explode. It simply stopped being a ship. The kinetic energy was so enormous that the matter vaporized instantly. Admiral Krelvin and his entire crew died without even knowing what hit them. The battle lasted for hours. It was brutal, desperate, and absolute. The human forces gave no quarter. They hunted down every Velner ship, destroyed every escape pod, eliminated every trace of the invasion fleet. When it was over, space around Earth was silent. The debris field stretched for millions of kilometers. Pieces of Velner warships drifted in the void, twisted metal and shattered technology that had once been an unstoppable armada. Of 500 ships that came to conquer Earth, none remained. The silence after the battle was profound. Captain. Jinho stood on the bridge of his borrowed frigate and looked out at the wreckage. His crew was exhausted. Lieutenant Hyrin sat at her station with her head in her hands. Ensign Taman had fallen asleep at his console. Around Earth, every human ship that still had power was running search and rescue for survivors. The cost had been terrible. Humanity lost 70% of its space fleet. Thousands of soldiers and crew members were dead. The orbital platforms were gone. The lunar bases were ruins. Mars Garrison was a shadow of what it had been. But Earth survived. Humanity survived. General Sangho's voice came over the comm. All ships, stand down from combat status. Begin recovery operations. Captain Park, report to Earth when you're able. The President wants to meet you. Far away in Velner space, the High Command was in chaos. Supreme Overlord Dexrael watched the final transmissions from the doomed fleet. The recordings showed impossible things. Primitive humans destroying advanced Velner warships. Simple kinetic weapons tearing through quantum shields. An entire armada eliminated by a species that should not have been able to fight at all. How is this possible? Dexrael demanded. How did 500 of our best ships lose to these creatures? The military council had no answers. They had studied the recordings 100 times. The humans used nothing exotic. No quantum weapons. No dimensional technology. Just mass accelerated to high speeds. It was almost insulting in its simplicity. We underestimated them, one advisor said quietly. We thought their lack of advanced technology made them weak. We did not consider that they might be tactically brilliant. We did not consider that they might be willing to sacrifice everything to defend their world. Dexrael slammed his fist on the table. Prepare another fleet. We will know, another advisor interrupted. Supreme Overlord, we cannot. The humans have now captured our ships. They have our technology. They know how our weapons work, and they have proven they can defeat us. If we send another armada and it fails, the entire Empire will know we are vulnerable. Before the XRL could respond, the communications officer spoke up. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's on all Velner frequencies. They want us to see it. Play it, Dexrael ordered. The screen changed. It showed President Mi-Sun Han standing in what was clearly a military command center. Beside her stood General Sangho Kim, his uniform dirty from battle. On her other side was Captain Jinho Park, bandages visible on his neck and arms, but standing straight and strong. Behind them was a large window showing Earth. Blue and beautiful, and UNKOER, ex-President Mi-Sun spoke, and the translation came through clearly. To the Velner Empire and any other species listening to this broadcast, I am Mi-Sun Han, President of Earth's Panaceian Coalition, speaking on behalf of all humanity. She paused, and her expression was hard as steel. You came to our home. You threatened our families. You demanded we surrender our world and our freedom. You believed we were weak because our technology is less advanced than yours. You were wrong. General Sangho stepped forward. Your armada is destroyed. 500 warships came to conquer Earth. None survived. We are broadcasting the tactical data now, so you can see exactly how we defeated you. This is not a threat. This is a warning. Captain Jinho spoke next. We did not want this war. We were peaceful. We were exploring our own solar system and hurting no one. You forced us to fight. You taught us how to kill. Remember that when you think about sending more ships, President Masoon raised her hand and the camera zoomed in on her face. Let this be clear to the Velner Empire and every civilization in this galaxy. Earth bows to no one. We will not fire the first shot, but we will always fire the last. We do not seek conflict, but we will not run from it. Stay away from our sun. Stay away from our worlds. Leave us in peace, and we will leave you in peace. Come in war, and you will find only death. She stepped back, and the three leaders stood together, humans who had just defeated an empire. We are humanity, President Masoon said. We survive. We adapt. We fight. Remember us. Transmission ended. The tactical data began to flow across Velner systems, showing in precise detail how their shields failed against kinetic weapons, how their formations were exploited, how their confidence led to their destruction. Supreme Overlord Dexrel sat in silence for a long moment. Then he spoke. Issue an imperial decree. Earth is now a quarantine world. No Velner ship is to enter their solar system. Any captain who disobeys will be executed. We will not speak of this defeat outside this council. Within days, the message from Earth spread across the galaxy. Other species who had been watching the conflict with interest suddenly changed their approaches. Instead of invasion fleets, Earth began receiving diplomatic envoys. Instead of demands for surrender, humanity got requests for trade agreements. The Korvax Collective sent ambassadors asking for an alliance. The Drashi Federation offered technology exchanges. Even species far more advanced than the Velner approached carefully, respectfully, understanding that humanity had proven something important in that battle. On Earth, the rebuilding began. Dr. Eugen and engineer Dongwook led teams studying the captured Velner technology. They learned how to build better shields, more efficient engines, advanced weapons systems. Within a year, human ships would be upgraded with a mix of their own kinetic weapons and captured alien technology. Captain Jinho was awarded the Medal of Terra, Earth's highest military honor. He accepted it on behalf of all the crews who died in the battle. Lieutenant Hayrin received a promotion and co-command of her own ship. Ensign Timon became a senior tactical officer, his gift for calculating firing solutions recognized throughout the fleet. Commander Hyensu rebuilt the lunar bases, but this time they were designed as fortresses with weapons hidden in every crater. Major Suben took command of the new Mars Defense Fleet, expanded and equipped with the latest technology. Commander G1's carrier tactics became required study at every military academy. Colonel Taesoon and Lieutenant Youngmi trained the next generation of fighter pilots. Their squadron became legendary, known as the Ghost Squadron for how they appeared from nowhere to strike at the Velner fleet's vulnerable points. Vice Admiral Unisio was promoted to fleet admiral and given command of humanity's first deep space fleet. She took her ships beyond the solar system, exploring, mapping, making sure everyone knew that humans were no longer confined to Earth. General Sung Ho established the Outer System Defense Doctrine. Every planet, every moon, every large asteroid in the solar system received weapons and defenses. Never again would Earth be vulnerable. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Premier Buchang Song launched the Solar Fortress Initiative. Massive construction projects began in orbit and on the moon. Shipyards, manufacturing centers, training facilities. Humanity was preparing not just to defend, but to reach out to the stars. 1 year after the battle, Ginho stood on the observation deck of the new orbital station, Jesset. It was built from both human and captured alien technology, a symbol of how humanity had taken the tools of their would-be conquerors and made them their own. Lieutenant Hyrin joined him, now a captain herself. Do you think they'll come back? She asked. Jinho looked out at the stars. I don't know, but if they do, they'll find us ready. They'll find us stronger. They'll find us standing together. He thought about all the people who died defending Earth, the crews of destroyed ships, the soldiers in ruined bases, the civilians caught in the crossfire. They gave everything so humanity could survive. We won't forget them, Jinho said quietly. Every ship we build, every weapon we forge, every person we train, it's all to honor those who fell. They died protecting Earth. We lived to make sure their sacrifice meant something. To make sure it never happens again. To make sure that if it does happen again, we win even faster. Across the galaxy, species told stories about the humans who destroyed a Velnor Armada. Some stories were respectful. Some were fearful. All of them agreed on one thing. Humanity was no longer a primitive species to be conquered. They were a force to be reckoned with. The Velnor Empire never attacked Earth again. They declared it a forbidden zone and pretended the defeat never happened. But every Velnor officer knew the truth. Every captain understood that there were some species you did not challenge, some worlds you left alone. Earth had announced itself to the galaxy not as victims, but as warriors. Not as prey, but as predators. The blue planet that seemed so peaceful and inviting was now marked with an invisible warning that every spacefaring civilization understood. Here lived humanity. Here lived a species that fought with primitive weapons and brilliant tactics. Here lived people who would sacrifice everything to protect their home. Here lived the species that shattered an armada, stay away, or learn the same lesson the Velnor learned. On Earth, children grew up hearing stories of the Great Battle. They learned about Captain Jinho and his final stand on a G7. They learned about Lieutenant Heron's perfect targeting. They learned about all the heroes who stood against an empire and won, and those children grew up knowing that humanity was strong, that they could face any threat, that their ancestors had proven something fundamental about the human spirit when faced with extinction. Humans do not surrender. They fight. They adapt. They win. And they make sure the galaxy never forgets.